All right, we're sitting here with Dan Hughes, who, if you know, he's won this race called Dirty Kanza 4 times, and now he's here down getting ready for his first BWR this year. So, Dan, we're stoked you're here. We're stoked we got you to California. Before we kind of get into, the meat of this convo, let's get a little background on you and, how you became 4-time DK winner.
Sure. Well, I was born in Wisconsin, and then at some point my mom, who is a single mom, decided we should move to Colorado, and we moved to Colorado to the Western Slope, and I started as a runner. I'd run 10Ks and distance events for, track, and that endurance sort of bug was what I did. And then at the age of 15, well, let me walk that back. At the age of 14, my mom got remarried. We moved to Kansas. My stepfather, Jim Smith, worked for Hallmark Cards as a master designer. He would design cars and that sort of stuff. So we lived in Kansas, kept running. And in 1984, at the age of 15, I thought, I'm going to do a marathon. And so I signed up for the Macy's Marathon, and at age 15, ran 26.2 miles. And once I got done, I was like, I am never doing that again. That is terrible.
Was that it?
What's that?
Was that really it?
Oh yeah, that was when I started running.
So you were a sophomore in high school?
Yep. Playing soccer all year.
Oh yeah, the same background. Soccer, ran first marathon at 12.
So
That's Michael Marks talking, by the way.
My brothers ran their marathon when they were 8, their first one at least.
I was hyper competitive with my stepbrother Fred, and Fred got up one day and said he was going to run a marathon, and I was like, what the hell? I'm the runner, and so I'm going to do it. And of course, I love Fred. He's a great guy, but he was a no-show for the 84 Macy's Marathon, and I did it. And as soon as I got done, I was hobbled up and not really excited about running anymore. And my gym teacher, I presented a note that said, listen, I ran 26.2 miles yesterday. I don't think I can participate in gym class and do dodgeball or whatever the ball sport was. And he's like, no, you're going to do it. And so I thought, I need to get rid of running. I need a sport where I can coast every once in a while. And maybe, I don't want to get too metaphysical here or philosophical, but maybe that's an allegory for my life. I need to have something I can coast every once in a while to recharge the engine. So I picked up a bike. I started doing 100-mile and 200-mile road rides, double centuries. And then mountain bikes came along, and I started racing mountain bikes. And then eventually, because we have so much gravel around Lawrence and northeast Kansas, we started riding gravel. And one particular fall, probably in the fall of 2005, we had heard that the folks down in Emporia were going to do this 200-mile race. And I thought, I don't know if I can do that or not. But I opened my big mouth during this fall classic 100-mile gravel ride that we'd been doing for years, and I said, I'm going to do that. And then I was like, oh shit, I don't know if I can actually make it. So I trained my butt off, and in 2006 I was one of the very first members of, there were 34 of us the very first year of Kanza at this really what I would call a socks on hotel. So you would take somebody you cared about, but you would never take your socks off in this place. It was a dirty, nasty hotel. But as a rider, it was amazing because you could roll out of bed. The start and finish was right there, and you would get done, and you would roll back into bed just sauced up from a day of riding your bike through the Flint Hills, and you would not care what you were doing to the sheets because that was not the harshest thing that they had ever seen. So anyway, 2006, 34 of us. We rolled out, and that's where it all started. So I was fortunate enough at the time. I'll back up. Let me pedal it back a little bit. I got my degree in anthropology from KU. I think I started on 8 different career or degree paths, and after 4 years, I was like, I know I like science, but maybe not hard science. So anthropology is an out. And at the time, I was working at Sunflower Outdoor and Bike Shop, which has been around since 1972. And I thought, I'm having way more fun putting people on bikes and putting backpacks on their back and putting canoes in a river and getting people outdoors because I fervently believe that life is better outdoors. So I took my anthropology degree. I like to say that I'm experiencing different cultures throughout the world through retail. And I started working there in '89, and in 2001, the Milsteins, the people that had founded the business, decided they were wanted to sell it, and so we bought it, and I've been there ever since. But the Kanza and gravel in general has been a wellspring of bringing roadies and new riders and the tribal aspect of adventure. I think is a pretty poignant calling card for a lot of folks.
So speaking on that, like since you've literally, we're talking about like, DK, for example, you were there the first, and, you've seen where it's at now. You see this gravel explosion through the industry, BWR, where this is not a, pure gravel event, but it's a mixed surface, it's a race, it's kind of in that same path as far as like new style events. Like, what are your 2 cents on, obviously you guys did the first DK gravel because that was just, you guys have gravel roads out there, but now what it is and, what BWR is, like, you've seen it. So, like, what do you think about this whole transition? World Tour pros coming in, the industry's just all on it. This thing's selling out in minutes. Like, and you've just kind of seen the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, last night we were sitting around, and Peter Stetina, obviously World Tour pro, was standing up there and talking about how he was doing alternative events for 2020. And somebody asked out of the crowd, asked him a question about how he got through the dark spots of these events. And I really believe that you can go out and ride a 40-mile ride, and it can be perfect, like tailwinds and sunny, and your bike is perfect, and you get done and you're not changed. Or you can go and do the same 40-mile ride, and your bike doesn't work, and it's a headwind, and it's raining, and you come back, and that ride is just crap. But endurance length events, there's a wave that you ride, and there are low spots and there are high spots, and I think the allegory for life in that is that the high spots and the low spots don't last forever. So if you're in a low spot and your nutrition sucks and the headwind is killing you, that's not going to last forever. Just like a downturn in your life might not last forever. But a high spot where you're riding 30 miles an hour with the tailwind and it's amazing and your bike is perfect and your nutrition is dialed, all that sort of stuff, that's not going to last forever either. But at the end of that endurance length event, having ridden through those waves of the event, I think you come out the other side a changed person. And so to your question of the meteoric rise of gravel and drawing world tour riders to it, I think it's amazing. I think they're going to experience those same highs and lows that aren't manicured. There's no team car that's throwing a new wheel under them if they get a flat. There's no well, there might be, I guess, someday, like a team of 8 guys that are dragging one guy around. It's an adventure, right? And I think it's an incredible evolution of the sport, and the fact that promoters, whether it's Michael Marks at BWR or it's Bobby Wintle at Mid-South or it's Jim Cummins and Leland Danes and Christy Moan at Dirty Kanza, they are as excited about the thoroughbred that comes across the line first, whether it's a Colin Strickland or a Amy Charity or a Ted King or whatever. They're excited about that, but they're also as excited about the person that comes in with 1 minute to spare before the time cutoff. So the tribal nature of this endurance gravel or mixed surface or adventure race, I think kind of segregates it from the typical type A roadie sort of thing, and maybe harkens back into the mountain bike era when you would do an epic ride on your mountain bike and then meet in the parking lot and have a beer afterwards and rehash the day. And I think that's pretty powerful.
So, like, switching gears a little bit, obviously Kanza like the back of your hand. You know those roads, you know that terrain. Now you're coming out and you're going to give BWR shot. You're here at the camp. You're riding. You've ridden most of the course. I'm sure you have a pretty good idea of like what the terrain is out here for the race. How can you like explain the difference from like the DK train to the BWR train to maybe where someone is in Kansas or in the Midwest and they want to come out here and do this race, or they are going to come out here and do it, but they know DK, they don't know here. Like, what are the talking points, the differences of this?
Well, that's the thing I love about gravel, if you put gravel in quotation marks, is that it's variable throughout the country. So the surfaces that we rode to get today at camp, you could totally do on a 700 by 28. That's probably the right choice, right? You've got a lot of pavement. If you're an adept bike handler and you can bomb the Black Canyon descent comfortably, that's the most efficient choice. But if you showed up at the Kanza on essentially a road bike with 700 by 28s, you would get eaten alive because it's a different, chunkier, gnarlier, sharper experience. So you take BWR and you contrast that with Kanza, or you contrast it with Gravel Worlds in Nebraska, or Iowa Wind and Rock, formerly known as Trans Iowa in Iowa. It's different all over the place, and I think that part of the equipment adventure is, as a retailer, it's awesome because people sign up for the Kanza or BWR. They sign up for these amazing events, and whether it's a lottery or they get up and they're on their computer at the exact right moment at 8 o'clock and they get into the event, they almost immediately are like, oh my God, yes, I got in. And they're like, oh shit, I got in. And so they have to figure out what their equipment is going to be. And so the retailer in me is like, that's an opportunity, right? To bring more people into the tribe and get them on the right product so that they're going to have a great experience. In a nutshell, if I was to compare BWR to Kanza, obviously BWR has a lot more road sections. Prizing lightweight and fast rolling is huge. Everybody has a different comfort zone on hitting those dirt or gravel sectors. Today I was riding on an IRC 700 by 40, that's a fat tire, but bombing the Black Canyon descent, I was completely comfortable and happy. It takes a different skill set. Kanza, you need some volume in your tire because there are times near the end of the day when, I should walk that back and say every Kanza I've done 10 Kanzas. I've been fortunate enough to win 4 times. I've been 8 times in the top 10. Yada, yada, yada. But every single one of those Kanzas between mile 120 and 160, I have thirsted for a rock or something to come up and break my bike in half because it is not fun anymore. I mean, you're 6 hours in. At that point, there's still a long way to go, and you cannot see the barn. And so if you're riding and smashing into that rock is 3 millimeters closer to the finish line, you just fucking smash into that rock. That's how it works. So in those moments where your mental game sort of lapses, and a lot of this is mental, it's nice to have some volume in your tire. It's just an insurance policy. But I love that. I love the variability of all this stuff. It's amazing.
So speaking of Kanza, and obviously your wealth of knowledge, you've done it, X amount of times. Like, did we hear so is your son going to do it for the first time this year?
Yeah.
So give us a little backstory on that, and like how. Obviously, like you probably have the most knowledge of anyone really with Kansas. So, like, how do you like set him up, or like, what do what's the goal with him, or like, just in general? I mean, that's gotta be pretty cool.
It's super cool, but I would start that conversation by saying he's a punk. He's 16 years old. He knows everything about the world, and I'm not going to be able to tell him anything. I have 3 sons: Arthur, Charlie, and Harold. They're all very old grandpa named kids. And they all came from the same set of genes, so I really don't understand why they're all so different. But Arthur, my eldest, is a percussionist. He loves playing the drums. I have no musical ability whatsoever, so that must have come from his mother's side of the gene pool. Harry, the 12-year-old, is a whirling dervish. He just spins around and does whatever he does. But somewhere in the middle is Charles. And Charles likes riding bikes. He likes taking motorcycles and taking them apart in the kitchen and leaking oil all over the floor. And so I like to tease him that he's my least favorite son, but he's probably in the top 3 of my favorite sons. And he likes riding bikes. And so for years, he has ridden bikes. His biggest accolades to date are that at age 13, we went up and did Rebecca's Private Idaho and did the big lap up there. At age 13, I think he was the youngest kid ever to complete the full lap. It took us 9.5 hours, and we were next to last and last. As a side note, the way Rebecca's Private Idaho works is if you win your category, you get a hat, like a custom branded cowboy hat, a straw hat. And I distinctly remember in that first year we were rolling into town, and we could see the last place guy, and he was right in front of this Ram vehicle. And I said, well, you don't get a hat for finishing last, so we should just finish. And he's like, no, you get a hat for finishing last. And I was like, no, you don't. And we finished, and God damn it, that guy got a hat. So first year, 9.5 hours, last and next to last or whatever. We were near the end. And he said, well, I want to go back next year. And he was a little despondent because it took him forever. And I was like, dude, you're 13. You've got a lot of time on your hands. So the next year we went back. He took 3 hours off of his time. In a strange twist of fate, a kid from Emporia, Kansas, Hunter Adams, was also there and beat him. So let me be clear. In the first year, he got second in his category by like 45 minutes. The next year, he went 3 hours faster, but the kid from Emporia went 3 hours and 45 minutes faster. And so he beat him again by 45 minutes. And the way Rebecca's Private Idaho starts with this 2,000-foot climb up Trail Ridge Road. And I'm a hardy Midwesterner. Peter Stetina weighs 135 pounds. I'm like 1.97 Stetinas. That's how I classify my weight. And we were rolling out of town, and Charlie, the second year, took off with Yuri Oswald and went up the road. And I had a bunch of friends that were like, man, Charlie's kicking your ass. And at some point he cracked, and he came back to me on the climb, and I had this fatherly moment where I was like, oh, I feel really bad that my son is cracked. This is a low moment. And then the racer in me was like, thank God he cracked, because I would never see that guy again. So the second year we got through it 3 hours faster. He was still second. And then we came back the third year, and he took another hour off his time, beat the course record, got the cowboy hat that his dad will never get. And ever since then, he has been champing at the bit to do the Kanza, the full meal deal of the Kanza. So he's done the 50 mile, he's done the high school race. I think he was top 10 in the 50, like on his own, just 14 years old or whatever. And being 16 years old and knowing exactly how the world works,
of course.
We are, diving into the Kanza this year. And I have 10 Dirty Kanza 200s on my belt. I have a DK XL, the 350 mile distance from last year, much in the way that I never need to run a marathon again. I don't need to do the XL again. So I'm going to bump it back to the 200 for him. And I hope I can keep him in sight, because he's one of those kids that just gets up off the couch and does it. But it's going to be amazing.
That's going to be awesome. We're definitely going to have to find out how that goes. So, before we wrap this up, you've got the DK experience. You know that in and out. Obviously, BWR has been growing, getting bigger, and now you're going to come do it for the first time here at camp. So, kind of like before you come here to camp, like, what were your thoughts on what BWR is? Like, what are you expecting? What are you nervous about? Like, just because I know, I'm sure you've seen the photos, the videos, and it is much different from DK. Mm-hmm. So, like, where's your, mindset at the fact that you've never done it? So you don't know exactly what it is, but, you're kind of seeing the terrain. Like, so how does, what goes through the motions for you with, excitement, nervousness, or, where are you at?
Well, I firmly believe that cyclists are a product of their environment. So if you live in a mountainous area, if you do well, you're going to be a wiry little climber, right? Kansas does not have any mountains. We have a lot of wind. We have a lot of humidity. We have a lot of heat. So my trepidation about BWR is I look at the results sheet. I look at the caliber of people that have won it. I look at the terrain with the the steep long climbs. I'm good on a really shallow long climb or a really steep short climb, but when you put steep and long together, that's not my bailiwick. So that's concerning to me. But I'm excited about the tribe. I'm excited about, and I should say that I feel like every one of these endurance length events there's 10% competers in a field. There's 10% competers and there's 90% completers. And that evolution of my own going from completer to completer doesn't change the experience for me. So in the very first Dirty Kanza, where there's 34 people, there's probably 3 guys that were racing for the win. The last win I had there was 900 guys guys and gals in the 200 distance, and so 90 of them were competing. But as I say, I think the experience is the same from the front end to the back end, and so it comes down to testing yourself against the course, enjoying those different sorts of adventure experiences. Today when we rode down that screaming descent at 50 miles an hour, just snaking through. It felt like the Tour de France, right? It felt like descending some amazing pass in the Pyrenees and then launching into a section of single track dirt where you're dodging a pothole or a hoof print or whatever. Keeping you on your toes and testing your mental and physical resolve, I think it pays dividends for everybody at the end of the day. So I'm excited to be part of that process.
Well, we're stoked to have you, and we're looking forward to seeing you do the first BWR and getting your thoughts on it. And we're gonna catch up with you right when you roll that line and throw a beer in your hand and say, "Hey, man, how was it?"
Sounds amazing. I'm so glad to be here.